New York never pauses for anyone, not even for Prince Harry. But that night, something inside him did. The lights, the cheers, the flashing cameras, they all felt heavier than usual. Witnesses say it wasn't just stage nerves. It was something deeper. The kind of silence that creeps in before the storm. Insiders later whispered that the Duke of Sussex didn't just lose focus. He lost his breath. Right there, under the same spotlight he once owned, Prince Harry froze. It started the moment he stepped out of the car. People noticed it instantly. The stiffness in his walk, the distant stare. Meghan waved gracefully, her smile camera ready, while Harry stood beside her, pale and uneasy. To the crowd, it looked like another glamorous Sussex appearance. But to those close enough to see, something was off. The charm was forced, the warmth gone. Even before stepping onto the stage, he looked trapped. Not by walls, but by memories. Backstage, whispers began. Crew members noticed Harry's hands trembling as he tried to steady himself. Someone offered him water, another asked if he needed a break. But the Duke simply nodded, eyes fixed on the floor. His breathing was short, uneven. It wasn't exhaustion. It was fear. Panic was clawing its way up his chest. And while this was happening, Meghan stood a few feet away, checking her reflection in a handheld mirror. Not a glance toward him. No soft word. Just another adjustment to her lipstick. Some might call that focus. Others saw it as distance. Because for Harry, that silence said everything. The woman beside him, his anchor in public storms, suddenly felt miles away. And for a man whose life had been haunted by flashing lights and sirens, that moment reopened a wound that never truly closed. Every flash of a camera felt like an echo of the night that stole his mother. Every applause like a ghost whispering her name. One staff member recalled hearing Harry mutter under his breath, something about the flashes. That's when it clicked. This wasn't anxiety. It was a trigger. Trauma wrapped in tuxedo fabric. He wasn't in New York anymore. He was 12 years old again, watching the world mourn through the lens of endless cameras. The same kind that still follow him everywhere. You see, back in the UK, Harry could manage these moments. Charity events, Invictus games, those were safe spaces. He felt purpose, connection, meaning. But this wasn't purpose. This was performance. And that difference broke him from the inside out. Because in New York, the stage wasn't a platform, it was a mirror. One reflecting every scar the world told him to hide. And then came the moment. The lights brightened. The cue was given. He had to walk out there, smile, deliver his speech. And he did. He forced every word through shallow breaths, his palms slick with sweat, his pulse racing like a drumline in his ears. Cameras flashed, the crowd cheered, and Meghan smiled beside him. Perfect posture, flawless poise. To the audience, it looked like royalty reborn. But to the people in the front row, Prince Harry looked like a man barely holding it together. When the applause ended, the show was over. For the audience. But behind the curtain, the real story began. Witnesses say Harry walked off stage without a word, straight past assistants and staff, straight past photographers. His face pale, his chest tight, he stumbled into a corridor where security quickly cleared the way. He sat down against the wall, breathing hard, eyes unfocused. One aide quietly said it looked like he was fighting to remember how to breathe. Meanwhile, Meghan, still glowing under the lights, reportedly picked up her phone, not to check on her husband, but to check the photos, to see how they looked, to see if the narrative stayed perfect. That's when people realized this wasn't just a performance for the cameras. It was a performance for each other. An insider described Meghan's tone backstage as calm, but cold. Business as usual, they said. No panic, no emotion. When Harry tried to speak, she brushed him off with a quick, "We'll talk later." It wasn't cruelty. It was control. Her version of composure. But to him, it must have felt like ice. Because when someone you love doesn't flinch at your pain, it cuts deeper than any headline ever could. And that night wasn't an exception. People close to the couple hinted it's a pattern. Harry feels, Meghan fixes. He collapses, she manages. The brand moves on while the man behind it falls apart. The palace once silenced him. Now the cameras do. The stage that made him visible also makes him vulnerable. The saddest part? Harry still played his role. Still smiled for the crowd. Still posed beside Meghan as though nothing happened. Because for him, duty never ended. It just changed shape. The crown may be gone, but the weight? It's still there. Only now it comes in the form of headlines and PR spin. And as the night ended, the glitter faded and the crowd disappeared. Prince Harry was left with the same ghost that's followed him for decades. The ghost of flashes, the ghost of grief, and the quiet realization that sometimes, even surrounded by cameras and applause, you can feel completely alone. The New York night may have ended, but the storm inside Prince Harry didn't. For everyone else, it was another glamorous chapter in the Sussex story. For Harry, it was the moment everything quietly cracked. Insiders say he spent the next morning in silence, avoiding calls, barely eating, walking through the penthouse suite like a man replaying every breath he'd lost the night before. The panic hadn't vanished, it had only changed shape. And while Harry tried to heal, Meghan was already moving on to the next headline. Because in her world, stillness is dangerous. If the lights dim, so does relevance. Within a week, her team was buzzing again, coordinating Paris invites, press lists, wardrobe fittings. She told one assistant, "Momentum matters." And just like that, the Sussex story had a sequel, this time written in the language of fashion and fame. When the jet touched down in Paris, Harry looked distant, eyes hidden behind sunglasses even at night. He smiled politely at photographers, but anyone close enough could see it wasn't joy. It was survival. Meanwhile, Meghan Markle, dressed in precision-perfect couture, was glowing. Cameras loved her, and she loved their attention back. But this time, that glow came with controversy. Word leaked that Meghan had personally contacted Balenciaga's creative director, offering to grace the front row. It sounded bold, confident, until the designer's team confirmed they'd barely spoken beyond a few texts. That revelation hit the internet like wildfire. Suddenly, headlines questioned whether Meghan had invited herself. And behind closed doors, her calm started to fracture. Sources say she was livid, not because she'd been caught, but because someone had exposed the illusion. Her entire brand thrived on being wanted, pursued, admired. To admit she'd reached out first was to admit vulnerability. And in her empire, image is everything. So who did she turn to? Prince Harry. The same man who could barely walk into a spotlight without shaking was now expected to fix a PR scandal. Insiders say Meghan insisted he call the designer personally to smooth things over. "You have to handle it," she reportedly told him. "It'll sound stronger coming from you." And he did. Because that's who Harry is, the protector, the peacemaker, the man who still believes love means carrying the weight when the other person can't. But those who overheard the call said his voice trembled. It wasn't anger. It was exhaustion. The once fiery prince who spoke with soldiers now sounded like someone apologizing for being alive in the spotlight. That's when friends began to notice the shift. One of Harry's old army mates told reporters, "He's starting to vanish, piece by piece." The man who used to stand tall now moved like someone dodging invisible blows. The palace may be behind him, but the pressure never left. It just changed accent. Weeks later, the next PR move dropped. Photos of Harry and Meghan supposedly dining with Ed Sheeran in London. Within hours, tabloids splashed the story. The Sussexes reconnect with Britain's biggest star. The imagery was perfect, relatable, powerful, headline gold. Except, according to restaurant staff, Ed Sheeran wasn't with them. He was simply eating a few tables away. The story had been shaped, spun, and launched before dessert even arrived. To the public, it was glamorous coincidence. To insiders, it was orchestration. And when Harry found out, witnesses say his face fell. He didn't argue. He just went quiet again. Because once more, truth had been traded for optics. He'd become part of the script, not the author of it. From that point, Prince Harry began retreating. Fewer events, fewer interviews. He preferred private dinners, small gatherings, moments without cameras. One close aide described it best. He's learning how to disappear. But for Meghan, disappearing was never an option. Her calendar filled with new partnerships, rumored magazine shoots, potential brand launches. Every project, every photo shoot, every event, another brick in the empire she refuses to let crumble. The difference between them grew wider. Harry sought quiet. Meghan sought control. He wanted to breathe. She wanted to build. He saw flashbulbs as ghosts. She saw them as currency. It wasn't right or wrong. It was survival in two directions. And yet, beneath the surface, there was still love. That's what makes their story so haunting. Because even when she strategized and he retreated, they kept orbiting each other. Two souls tied by trauma, trying to make sense of fame's cruel mirror. Insiders said there were moments when Meghan would find him sitting in silence, eyes unfocused, and gently touch his shoulder. For a second, the walls would lower. Then the phone would buzz, and she'd be gone again, back to managing the narrative. Behind closed doors in Montecito, Harry spends more time outdoors now, gardening, walking the dogs, keeping his distance from cameras. Friends say he finds calm in small things, quiet mornings, his son's laughter, the hum of normalcy. But even in that peace, the noise of the outside world never fully fades. There are always calls to attend, statements to approve, photos to review. The spotlight has no off switch. The cruelest part? Prince Harry once believed that leaving the monarchy meant leaving scrutiny. Instead, it multiplied. Every sigh becomes a story, every silence a scandal. The same crowd that once demanded royal protocol now demands content. And Meghan, ever aware of how fast fame fades, keeps feeding the machine. People close to them say their home has two rhythms. When Meghan is in work mode, the air buzzes with activity. Assistants, stylists, calls, plans. When Harry is alone, it's silent enough to hear the waves outside. It's a contrast that defines them. One lives through motion, the other through stillness. A former palace insider summed it up. He wanted freedom. She wanted a platform. They got both, and neither. That truth lingers in every photo we see. Because the smiles are perfect, but the distance between them is invisible only to the lens. And so, as Meghan prepares for her next magazine cover, carefully choosing every word and angle, Harry quietly watches from afar. Not resentful, just weary. He's lived through a lifetime of flashbulbs, and now he knows. They never stop flashing. They just change faces. If you saw them today walking hand in hand, you'd see grace, charm, love even. But look closer, and you'd notice the pause before his smile, the way her gaze scans for cameras before it softens toward him. They're partners, but also performers, trapped in a play the world refuses to end. Because the truth is, Prince Harry didn't escape the palace. He carried it with him. Every expectation, every eye, every headline followed. And Meghan, in trying to master the game, became the very thing she once said she feared, a prisoner of image. Together, they built a brand that shines like gold from afar, but up close, it hums with exhaustion. Maybe someday the cameras will stop, the lights will fade, and the world will let them breathe. Until then, Meghan will keep performing, Harry will keep enduring, and the ghost of that New York night, the night his breath disappeared under the spotlight, will never fully leave. Because that's the real story. Not the fashion shows or the dinner rumors, but a man and a woman standing on opposite sides of the same dream. One chasing the light, the other praying it finally goes out.